All right, so there's a revolution brewing in the world of global finance. But, it's not happening where you might think. It's all centered on one country and its currency. We're talking about India and its ambitious new plan to really push the rupee onto the world stage. So, this all leads to the big question, right? Is the Indian rupee actually being set up as a new challenger to the US dollar's dominance? The one that's been on top for so long? Well, let's dive into their strategy and see what's really going on. And make no mistake, at the heart of all this is a really clear, really deliberate plan. India is actively right now reshaping its economic policies. And this whole move, it's all about carving out a brand new role for the rupee on that world stage. Okay, so first up, let's take a look at the big picture here. This isn't just some minor policy tweak, not at all. We are talking about a fundamental shift in their entire economic strategy, and it's aimed squarely at one thing, achieving much greater financial independence. So the main goal, and this is coming straight from India's central bank and the government, is to really cut down the country's reliance on the US dollar. This is all about building a stronger, more resilient economic future, one that isn't so vulnerable to the policy decisions being made in other countries. Okay, so how is India actually pulling this off? What's the game plan? Well, the answer is this really coordinated, two-part strategy that's completely changing how the country handles its massive financial resources. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because it shows a huge shift in their thinking. For decades, right, the strategy was pretty passive. It was basically hold a ton of foreign currency, like US dollars, and just kind of react to whatever the market does. But the new strategy, it's all about being active. It's about proactively using those reserves to actually manage the economy and shape the outcomes. And hey, this isn't just some theory they're kicking around. Look at this number. In July, for the first time in decades, India's central bank didn't just stop buying US dollars, they actually sold 2.5 billion of them. That is a huge, powerful signal that this new active management style is for real. So it's like they're playing offense and defense at the same time. While one hand is out there actively shaping the market, the other is building up a defense. That's the second part of the strategy, boosting their gold reserves to act as this kind of financial shock absorber. They're using a super stable asset to shield their economy from all that chaos and volatility from the outside world. Okay, so we've covered the strategy, but let's see how this is all moving from theory into the real world. How is India actually getting other countries to start using the rupee? Well, the core mission is actually pretty straightforward. Make the rupee an international currency. The goal is to get countries all over the world to use the Indian rupee to buy stuff, sell stuff, and invest their money. Just like they do with the dollar or the euro today. And they're not just hoping it'll happen, they're making some really specific moves. For example, the new development bank is going to start issuing rupee bonds, which are basically loans that are given out and paid back in rupees. India is also lending to its neighbors in rupees, which kind of forces them to use the currency. And this is a big one. They've set up ways to settle trades, paying for goods, directly in rupees with major partners like the UAE and Russia. And has it been working? Well, get this. A staggering 95% of all trade between India and Russia is now settled directly in rupees. That is a massive, and I mean massive, rapid shift away from using the dollar for those deals. So all of this brings us to a really crucial question, right? What's the thinking behind all this? And why now? Why does India think this is the right moment to make such a bold move, especially with all the economic uncertainty in the world? Well, this quote really sums up the official thinking perfectly. The strategy is being framed as pro-Rupee, meaning it's all about strengthening India's own currency and economy. It's not about being anti-dollar or trying to tear down the whole global financial system. It's a subtle difference for sure, but a really important one. And look, you can't pull off a bold international strategy like this unless your own house is in order, right? India's confidence here doesn't just come from nowhere. It's being fueled by a huge, decade-long expansion of its own domestic banking sector, which has built a much more stable foundation to launch from. Just take a look at this incredible growth. It's absolutely wild. Back in 2014, India had around 150 banks and major financial institutions. Today, that number is over 2,600. This explosion has dramatically boosted financial inclusion, and it's strengthened the entire economy from the inside out. That's where the confidence to project power abroad is coming from.
So, where does all this go from here? Let's take a look at what the experts are predicting for the future as this whole strategy keeps rolling out.
Looking ahead, the general feeling is that this trend is just going to speed up. We should probably expect to see a faster rollout of those rupee-denominated bonds. We'll see more countries signing trade deals that don't involve the dollar, and it's all part of this bigger push for what people are starting to call financial sovereignty. And that really leaves us with one final critical question to think about. In a world that is so interconnected, what does it actually mean for a country to have financial sovereignty? Well, India's bold experiment with the rupee might just be an attempt to write a whole new answer to that question.